Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord. Welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Today we've got a good handful of cards to talk about. We have the new Produce SSR for Mikoto. We have the Support SSR for Hana. We have the Hazuki Support, the second of possibly many, as well as My Songs Collection Haruki. Now keep in mind that technically every single one of these cards are limited. Hazuki will be gone at the end of the year. Mikoto will be gone later today. I was going to try to get this video out earlier, but I have been full of things to do this week, completely unrelated to Shiny, and so I have just been able to barely fill out enough time to get a recording in today on the last day. So, sorry for everybody that was hoping for this one a little early. Haruki still has at least a couple days after this, so there's a little more time to decide if you think you need this card. So starting things off, we have Mikoto, who is a vocal card. Her initial appeal is a vocal 2.0 that then follows up with a vocal maximum 2.4 to all judges that scales based on how many different units are currently on your team. The plus appeal requires 2 or more Shis in your skill history, and it's a judge interest 50% buff for 2 turns and a judge interest 40% down for 1 turn. This applies to all judges. The upgraded version of the appeal is Vocal 3.0 single target into a Vocal 2.8 to all judges that again scales based on how many different units are on your team. The plus appeal has the same conditions and has the same effect. Overall, both of these appeals are very strong and are going to be very useful for people that are building for this card specifically. Being able to essentially apply a Daikichi effect to all judges is insane. And all it requires is Shis in your skill history, so it's something that will be very easy to activate once we look into what this card is really doing as we look into the passives and especially the memory appeal. Her 1-star passive is a vocal 60% up if Mikoto's on your team, and it has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a vocal 140% up if there are 3 or more Shis characters in your skill history. So if you have Nichika, Mikoto, then this 140% is active. Keep that in mind. This has a 25% chance to activate twice. She also has a vocal 110% up if you have Illumine on your team, at least 1, has a 15% chance to activate twice. Now this is part of many of the upgrades that she gets at 4 stars, so that's the first. The second is a vocal 120% up and attention 50% up if you have 1 Hokura member on your team. It has a 15% chance to activate twice. And finally, a memory gauge 20% up if there are 2 or more Nichika in your skill history. This has a 35% chance to activate once. Her total stat uncapped when maxed out is a plus 400 to vocal. Her memory appeal when maxed out is a vocal 3.0 that links into a vocal 3.0, but you'll notice that the link appeal is different from usual. This requires you to have 2 Nichika in your skill history in order for this to activate. Overall, I would say that Mikoto is a fascinating card for a couple different design aspects. For one, she's another on the list of the AoE appeals that apply a Daikichi effect, which is very strong. That automatically makes her a very good card in this current format. For 2, her memory appeal changes how link appeals work, which we haven't really seen outside of technically Nocchill, but this changing up how many characters you need of a specific person in your link appeal is interesting, and I'm curious to see where they're going to go with that in the future. She's an extremely solid card, and I think she's actually a pretty good center for what it's worth, and has merits as either being your vocal position or center position depending on what you need. I would say she's an easy double S unit, especially because of that Daikichi effect, and I would say that she's a very strong center at least an S. Maybe a little bit stronger, especially when you consider that a lot of Nichika cards buff the appeal strength of Mikoto, making that 6.0 way stronger than it actually is. So next then, we have Hana, who is a visual support. Her masteries include Unit Mastery SP, reaching plus 12 at level 75, otherwise plus 8 at level 65. She has Unit Mastery Visual Limit Up, reaching plus 5 at level 75, otherwise plus 4 at level 70, plus 2 at level 60. Visual Mastery Stamina, reaching plus 6 at level 80, otherwise plus 1 at level 55. And Unit Mastery Mental, reaching plus 8 at level 80, otherwise plus 3 at 65, plus 1 at 50. Overall, these are solid masteries. There's nothing really to complain about except for maybe the mental mastery inclusion, but a lot of cards have been doing this recently with some mental inclusion, so I have a feeling that they want more healthy teams going forward. Maybe that will have something to do with the way Fess is going, or maybe that has something to do with the new produce mode. We'll have to see. As for the rest of what Hana does, her initial appeal is a visual 2.5 that grants 1 mulligan. The upgraded version is a visual 4.0 that grants a mulligan. If this is your first time here, mulligans are the ability to discard an appeal in order to draw a new one on the same turn, without having to spend an appeal. It can be very useful. Of note is her 2-star passive, a visual 140% up if a live skill generation appeal has been used. This has a 20% chance to activate twice. Now, if you're unsure as to what that means, there are a couple limited comedic cards that have the effect where, when they use an appeal, it creates a new appeal somewhere in the deck. That is live skill generation. So as long as you have satisfied that condition of making an appeal, this passive will be live. Her 4-star passive is a visual 100% up if you are in the leader position, and it has a 20% chance to activate once. This ties into the fact that she gives you that additional mental from Unit Mastery Mental, since leaders are usually the one you want to dump as much mental stat into anyway. She has a plus 250 visual max uncap. Hana is a tricky call in the passive department, as she really only works with Comedic thanks to the live skill generation being a mandatory mechanic to utilize her best passive. The leader buff pairs up, as we mentioned before, with the mental mastery, which could limit where you're actually using this Hana the most effectively, but we'll have to see. Really, I would say this card is only good if you already have a lot of the big visual comedic pieces, or intend on using selection tickets in the future to grab those cards. I would say that if you are not running her for comedic and you just want a generic visual card, she's about a B to a B+. I think you could certainly do better, but you could absolutely do worse. And if you are using her on visual comedic, I think that she's a very easy inclusion at least the A+ to maybe S rank. Next in line, then, we have the Hazuki, who is a vocal support this time around. Her masteries include Vocal Mastery SP, reaching plus 15 at level 75, otherwise plus 10 at level 65. Also, I forgot to point this out on the first Hazuki card, but her first ability is not Idol's Bond, because she's not an idol, it's Hazuki's Bond. Thought that was a cute little touch. All of the level 10s that you see below this are for Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, Trouble Guard, and Stamina Support, which are all plus 10 at level 80, otherwise plus 8 at level 70, plus 6 at level 60. She also has a new mastery, which is this one right here. It is called Best Advice Mastery, reaching plus 12 at level 80, otherwise plus 8 at 75, plus 4 at level 70. This is tied into the upcoming game mode, say Halo, that we have no real details on how it works other than that you use one know-how book, and so we don't really know how effective this ability will be, but it is an ability nonetheless, and is one of the few instances I can think of an ability that is directly tied to a mode in particular. The last ability that she has here is Vocal Mastery Mental, reaching plus 15 at level 75, otherwise plus 5 at level 55. As for the rest of what our new Hazuki does, her only appeal is unlocked at 4 stars, and it is a Vocal 6.0 single target, which is, I think, the strongest single target appeal you have available from a support. As for the rest of what she has here, she has a Vocal 50% up at 1 stars if it's turn 3 or earlier, and it has a 20% chance to activate up to 3 times. Her 2-star passive is a Vocal 140% up if you have 3 or more differently named units on your team, with a 30% chance to activate once. Finally, a Vocal 150% up if you are in the leader position, and it has a 30% chance to activate twice. Her total uncaps are a plus 250 to Vocal and plus 50 to Mental. Hazuki is a lot more specialized this time around, but very clearly is built for one half of the units in the game. She synergizes perfectly with all units not named Hokura or Antika, so keep this in mind when pulling for this card. Overall, she seems good, but whether she's a better pick for you than the previous Hazuki entirely comes down to what team you're running and why. If you're running the 5-member teams, most of what she does is not super important for you. If you're running the smaller teams, there is a reasonable choice to be made there. I would say that she hovers in that B to S range as mentioned before, where if you're trying to use her on the larger teams, it's not going to feel as great. The masteries, I think, are a little bit weaker than the previous Hazuki as well. I think the loss of Room Mastery is a little unfortunate, but there is that interesting trade-off with the new ability, or rather the new mastery, So we'll have to see how that pans out, if at all. So finally, we have one more card to talk about. Ooh, which I probably shouldn't hit that button. I kind of forgot that it plays music. It's the new My Songs collection for Haruki. Haruki this time around is a visual card. So just like how we were talking about visual comedic, here's a new piece for it. Haruki's initial appeal is a visual 3.0 to all judges that increases the strength of Luca and Hana's appeals by 0.5 for 3 turns. This links into +1 mulligan. The upgraded version of the appeal is the same buff on a visual 4.5 appeal to all judges that links into the same effect. Her 1-star passive is a memory gauge 20% up if you have the full comedic lineup, and it has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a visual 120% up if Haruki is in your skill history, has a 20% chance to activate twice. And her 4-star passive is a visual 130% up if a live skill generation appeal has been used, and it has a 30% chance to activate twice. Now note that Haruki does not generate a live skill with either of her appeals, so you will have to use one of the other visual comedic cards in order to activate this condition. It's not something that she can do on her own. Her memory appeal, when maxed out, is a visual 2.5 that links into an additional visual 2.5. Her total stat on cap is a plus 350 to visual. Haruki, I think, is very solid and runs into a very similar vibe of the Hana support we were just talking about, in the fact that one of her passives she can't activate on her own. So she's going to depend very heavily on cards like Luca 4 or Hana 3 in order to utilize that very strong passive, because she can't do that herself. While I don't like the idea of buffing the appeals for characters that have already gone so you can access that mulligan, I do see the point in being able to further dig for those generated appeals. So the idea would be that you generate an appeal with Hana, generate an appeal with Luca, then you use Haruki to dig for the card by getting the additional mulligan, and by then buffing up their appeals so that way those created appeals are stronger. She feels like a perfectly capable card for visual comedic, and is the balanced center when comparing her 5.0 memory to Luca's 4.5 or Hana's 5.5. I don't think there's necessarily a bad choice there. It all kind of comes down to what you prefer. I would give Haruki a pretty easy A+, maybe teetering towards the S rank range. I think that because of her being a very solid AoE unit with a cool passive type, and works well within the context of her team, it is certainly worth picking up if you have all the pieces or plan to get them in the future. So, that will do it for the video today. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. Next time we'll be talking about the upcoming banner, which is Parallel Collection already. It's new cards for Natsuha and Asahi. Now, there's been a bit of a stir with Natsuha's, as it is very clear that her character in that timeline is graduating. So we're going to have to see what exactly happens there. Even the voice actress has been hyping this one up, so frankly, I'm kind of scared to see where the story is going, but hopefully it's a positive one. Let's look forward to the banner together. Till then, I've been Sho. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day.